Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today we're going to show some love to the rhythm section. We got the ace first call session bassist Dan Lutz out of LA with us. Quick announcement. I want to thank our mutual friend, Jeff Babko, for connecting us. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, quick background on Dan. He's a very busy LA session and touring bassist. He's also done a lot of work on films and in Broadway plays that have gone out to LA. I mean, a lot of work there, and that's a very hard gig. I've talked to people, and we'll get into that. Some of the artists he's played or toured with include Josh Groban, Lizz Wright, Kirk Whalum, Melody Gardot. Sorry about that. Patti Austin. Who's the guitar player on Patti Austin? I've had a lot of her.
Patti Austin's. Oh, she didn't have a guitarist when we were out. It was bass, drums, and keys.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then background singers. Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool gig.
Yeah, it was fun.
Brian Auger.
It was Greg Fillinganes. He was on keys.
Oh my God. That's not a bad situation.
Oh, you know what? In fact, one tour it was Paul Jackson Jr.
Okay. Yeah, I had Paul on the show a long time ago. Yeah. He's played with everybody.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's very cool. Thank you. Brian Auger's Oblivion Express, Robben Ford, who we had here on the show, Lyle Workman, and you played on Lyle's Uncommon Measures, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
That's a great album. Is that going to win a Grammy?
I hope it does. It deserves it. It is insane.
I know.
Unlike no other.
I know. I agree with you there, man. Michael Buble, Lang Lang, Thomas Dibdahl. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep, exactly.
He's a very popular Norwegian artist, and Jonathan Butler, who's a popular South African artist. And I read about him, when I was doing your stuff. He was the first Black artist played on the radio.
Insane. During apartheid, he grew up. He was like 7 or 8, and he got signed to Jive Records or something. And he was, even still to this day, you go over there and he needs security through airports. Like he became sort of like the Stevie Wonder or Michael Jackson of South Africa. And yeah, he's special over there.
Yeah, I would imagine. And I'll save the questions for him because I want to ask about him. Film scores that Dan has played on include Cop Shop, which is coming out real soon, Coming to America, which is a very robust soundtrack for sure.
Yeah.
All My Life, The Incredible Burt Wonderstone, which Lyle composed, I think. Chronicles of Narnia, and he's played on the Broadway shows out in LA of a number of like top line shows: Hamilton, Wicked, Frozen, Lion King, Book of Mormon, In the Heights, and Phantom of the Opera. And if you go and check him out on YouTube, he's got like the best bass face ever, man. When you're in the groove, it's like you're in the groove, man. It's really cool,
man.
to see that.
I can't help what's going on up here. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the right way to be, I think. Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, that is my pleasure. So you originally went to University of North Texas to study music. Great music school. I've had a lot of guests, a lot of high performance guests that went there. But then you left after a couple of years, finished up a few years later at Cal State Northridge.
Yeah.
What did you do? Like, what prompted you to leave UNT and then go back and get your degree?
Well, man, North Texas was an amazing school, and I learned so much being there with all of the people. I almost learned more from the students. I think there were like 500 jazz freshmen there. It was incredible. It's like 40 bass players. I'd never been around that many bass players.
Wow.
So I loved it. And I did okay, and really met some great friends that I still have to this day, guitarists and drummers and, multi-instrumental bass players that are out in LA now. But after a year of being there, I was watching these people graduate and move to LA or New York to try and start working. And I knew enough about the business to know, like, you need to network and market. And I can't just show up with a degree from North Texas and expect to beat out these people that have been working here for 2 or 3 years. And I live there, and I can go there and live there for free and continue my education and start working. And so that's what prompted the move. So I went back, stayed with my folks again, got a full ride at Cal State Fullerton for a semester in orchestra, hated it, moved to Northridge with a buddy of mine. I got a scholarship there, and the rest is history. That's where I met Babko and so many people, was when I was at Cal State Northridge. and I got my music education degree there. And then I started working, and then I wanted to get my master's. And so I just popped over to Cal Arts, which a lot of people had, from Northridge went there. And my favorite upright bassist, Charlie Hayden, was teaching there. So I got to study with him in literally his last year there. So I really caught it, 2002, I think it was. And so, and Cal Arts it was either like USC or Cal Arts. Mm-hmm. Cal Arts was like super open. Like they just did pass fails, and SC is notorious for machine. Like you're going to be transcribing. It's an education. Cal Arts is more of like a walk through options, you know,
it's more playing. It sounds like.
Yeah. And Joe LaBarbera and Larry Kuntz and David Reutzstein and all of these amazing, you know, teachers are there. Wadada Leo Smith, and it's just incredible. Of course, Darek Oles and Charlie. So anyway, I was gigging so much that I didn't have time to go to school so much, but I still wanted the education. So I spent the money and I went to Cal Arts, and it was awesome and totally worth it. And that's where I met some great friends to this day, you know.
That's awesome. Question for you. You said I knew enough about how the business worked that I had to go out and play and network. How did you have that knowledge base?
Well, I remember my cousin, like when I was thinking about colleges, one of his words of wisdom was, think about the city in which you want to live and have a family and career, and then go there and study. And I thought that was interesting because his motivation, as he was in, you know, commercial marketing and advertising, and his whole thing is networking. And he said, as a musician, especially in those careers in which you need to network, this is a networking industry.
100%.
So he's like, the sooner you start that, the better you, even if you're not the best bassist in you know, the area, the fact that you've had relationships for the last 2 years is going to give you a leg up. And then you're going to be in that circle, hopefully, if you're a nice dude and can play. Right. And then you maintain that based on that. But you know, the education and the degree doesn't help you. You know, all the fruits of my education were relationships. Right. I mean, of course, I learned certain things, but it's relationships. That's where I was rich in education.
So let me ask you a question. That I think that, first of all, congratulations, because that took some balls to. Yeah. No, it did, to say, hey, first of all, you've got, would you say 400 or 40 bass players alone? Is that what you said? I mean, you have all these people that are, you know, college is like a cult in a sense.
Right.
And everybody's in the cult worshiping the cult lead. I don't mean that literally worshiping, but you know, there's a path that everybody there. So I think number one, it takes courage and wisdom to look beyond, you know, to not be influenced by everybody, not do what everybody else is doing. So congratulations. That was really cool. But how did you, the other thing is you must be pretty good at cutting yourself slack, because
how do you mean?
Well, one of the things people always say is that, you know, no matter what level of player they are, they're always like, well, I need to get better. I'm not as good as this guy. But you had a different mindset. You said, I don't think that, you know, taking your cousin's advice and just looking around, I don't think that that's going to matter. I need to get, you know what I mean? So I give you a lot. I mean, so, and you have to be, I think you have to be very kind to yourself to do that.
You know, I hear what you're saying too. And I think some of it is that I knew that I didn't want to be one particular bass player. Like I wasn't after the solo career, and I wasn't after super jazz. Okay. And I wasn't after, so in that regard, like, I guess in one way you could say, you know, jack of all trades, master of none, right? That would be that's what I was kind of after. But I was also really aware that I had a lot of different, I loved variety in the playing. Like when you were reading like some of the stuff I've done, like it's almost by necessity and design. Like I love the challenge of Broadway. Yeah. And I love touring with Robben Ford. Right. And I love going into the studio with Buble. And I love playing Phantom of the Opera, which is all up, you know, bow. I love that I love like the variety. I love going to teach a lesson, and then I love going to go play at church. And then so that was that was how I saw my career. And so LA, I needed LA to map out that framework. It wasn't about, I'm going to be the most amazing on upright bass and I'm going to shed for 5 hours a day. And then I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to pursue jazz.
Yeah.
It's not what I was doing.
How did you know that?
I didn't realize that.
How did you know that early on? That's like,
because honestly, because family was going to be more important to me. And I wanted to have a family and be able to support a family playing music. That was my directive. That was what I was after. So I knew diversity was what I wanted to do. And I knew that I also needed to be really good in all of those areas to sustain when one wasn't busy or the other. So if I'm not busy in doing a film score or doing an album from home, I'm probably doing a show on Broadway or playing some stuff at church or doing like I have options. And so that's what I was after as a musician. And I sometimes that I don't think that's super common. They're like, no, I want to be a family man, but I'm going to be a musician. You know, most people are like, I'm going to be a musician, and then maybe family comes later.
Right.
I wanted both.
Man, I give you so much credit. But you know, one of the things you said, jack of all trades, master of none. If you're a session player, you'd better be. You know, whether you master or not is irrelevant, but you better be jack of all trades for sure.
Right.
You know,
yeah. No, there's a degree of the diversity that I've found outside that I bring into sessions. And I feel like that's my most comfortable environment is sessions either at home for clients around the world or going and doing an album, you know, with the Cats or something, you know, in here in Hollywood. But I feel like that's kind of my touch point. That's where I love to be. And then everything else shoots out of that and feeds into it.
Yeah. And this, how smart of you to know that I better have 10 different ways of making money in this, in as a musician.
Right.
No, I mean,
that was probably like some of my dad was a choral teacher for high schools and his whole life. And my mom was sort of a nurse. So very, you know, working class, middle class, but, and they were like, no one had done music professionally. It was always music education, my dad and his mom. And so it was either like, Dan, do business or teach, you know, but don't go out on the ledge and play, you know, don't be freelance, you know? And so I think I had that in the back of my mind. Like, that's why I did education, because I knew a performance degree wasn't going to get me anything. And I knew that a master's would continue to challenge me and let me meet new people and study and get new ideas to feed me later on. And so, you know, that's how I arrived here.
Smart. That's really smart. I give you a ton of credit. How did you know so early that you wanted to have a family? Yeah. I mean, if you're cool talking about that.
Yeah. I think I had a great family growing up. I still do. My parents are still together. My sister's one of my best friends. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
It just worked. And when it works, you know, I feel like family, you know, we always say in our house and everything we do with productions and stuff, family first. Like if a client or somebody has something come up because of family, like there's never, like, that's always been given priority in my heart. Yeah. And it's always, you know, my whole life. And so I never thought that music would be able to trump that. I never, it never even got to a place where like, no, I still want to have a family. If I have to, you know, I'm not Dan the musician, right? I'm not Dan the bass player. I'm Dan the husband, the father, the friend first. Yeah. And so that's always been where I come from. And so that's how I make my decisions. And that's kind of how now, I'm a musician also, and it's super important. And last year was super shitty with just like having all of the tours and all of the stuff just shut down. And I had to really wrestle with that. Am I Dan the musician, or am I Dan the dad and the husband? Because I need to arrive in that area despite all of my work not happening and find out who I am, you know? So that was a wrestle, but that's how that's kind of how I made my decision. It's always been kind of just in me. And I'm sure that there are other people who come from a broken family who had nothing, and all they want to do is find that thing. And that drives them to be the best in that, you know, that they are. And that's awesome. My drive is different, but the path is, you know, the avenue is the same.
That's really cool. It's funny that you mentioned that your parents are still together, because I've been with my wife almost 30 years, and my kids are always like, I love telling people you guys are still, and I'm happy, that we're not together for that, but but I'm happy that we're together and it works.
Totally.
And it, like, for my kids, they're so like grateful, because like I said, all their friends' parents are divorced.
Right.
Yeah. It's really wild.
Yep.
It's
rough to go through.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. Okay. So you leave Cal Arts. What did you do right away? Like, what was lined up for you?
This is the best gig ever.
Yeah.
My first gig was, and I think it was even before Cal Arts, and before Brian Auger. My first gig was touring with Tony Danza.
Oh my God.
In a Vegas variety show. And my audition consisted of me sight reading a couple of show tunes and then singing doo-wop, Blue Moon, in 3-part harmony with Tony and the guitarist.
That's
so
crazy.
I sing, and so I got the gig. And I remember making $300 a day I was probably 21, 22.
It's great living.
A week in Atlantic City at Caesars, $50 a day per diem. I mean, it was the greatest gig.
Yeah.
And my best friend, John LaCroix, my roommate, he was on drums. And
awesome.
His dad was the MD, and that's how we got on it. And then the guitarist, you probably know Jim Fox. Jim Fox was he's an LA session great out here, and he played guitar. And and Kim Richmond, the alto saxophonist, another LA jazz great, was in the horn section. Man, we toured for like 2 years. Absolutely fantastic. Great experience. I actually got my butt kicked just really playing a show and not playing in a big band. I was just all loosey and playing fills, and they were like, play the ink. This is a show. This is not your jam.
Right.
So I learned quickly, and that was probably a very formative experience. Looking back, was like, there's a difference between nailing this as a sideman and showing who you are as an artist.
Yeah.
And I liked being able to do both. So I quickly figured out how to do both. And I still honestly, I'm sure I overplay as a first instinct usually the producer will be like, cool, can we get a simpler pass? That's usually what I start with. But anyway, so that gig was really cool. And then in college, I met some people through that, and it, it kind of led to some stuff, but I was still in college. And then Brian Auger, I remember going to a jam session or something, and Karma, Brian's son, was playing drums, and I sat in, and they were looking for a bass player, and we instantly connected. I even sort of looked like their family in a weird way. And so he was like, hey, I'm going to Europe on a 30-day, 28 city tour, and you want to go? And it was like another dream call. I'm like, yes, I want to go tour Europe in a van. I'm 21 or 22. Yeah. So I did that and I joined Oblivion Express for about 3 or 4 years. And we toured Europe twice a year for about a month and a half. I think I was making $900 a week, and I didn't care. Right. It was fantastic. And I learned so much from Brian and just touring. And Brian's birthday actually was yesterday. He just turned 82. Yeah. And he speaks like 5 languages.
Does he?
He speaks every language. As you travel through Europe, he just switches from German to English, Italian, and French. And
wow,
he's amazing.
That's really.
But so I toured with him, and Chris Claremont was on guitar, brilliant guitarist out of Detroit, and he was fantastic. And yeah, we just had an awesome time. It was a great learning experience for me to tour with those guys.
So starting off on that Tony Danza and then going to Brian, you were like spoiled.
Yeah, I really was. And I went from learning how to play a show and how to do this to a jazz fusion pioneer. I was like, this is crazy. And we were playing, pretty decent stuff in Europe. Brian doesn't sell as big in the United States unless you're in like Ohio. But in Europe, the Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters opened for him when they toured Europe, and he opened for Herbie when they toured the States. So they had,
go figure
he was
that.
playing with Hendrix and you know, all those cats. It was, yeah, he's a legend, man. It was
That's so
great times.
Who else did I have on? I think Derek Frank was playing bass.
Derek Frank played
recently.
with him. Absolutely. Yeah.
He
After me, Derek joined the band and I think did some records with them, and yeah, killed it. Just took it to another level.
Very cool, man. I'm going to ask you about some of the artists that you've worked with, and if you could tell me how you got the gig, how'd you wind up getting the gig, and then if there's a cool or interesting story about working with them. Let's start with Jonathan Butler, since we kind of talked about him. I gotta believe a guy who there's got to be something also like spiritually powerful about a guy who cracked that, you know, code there to be the first Black artist on South African radio.
Yeah.
What was that like? How'd you get that gig, and what was that like?
Yeah, interesting story. I got hired to play. There is a pianist named Philippe Sace, not the guitarist, but
I know you.
know what I mean?
He played with. He played with drummer in Protocol, or they did it. Simon Phillips. Yeah, they played
Pino
with
Palladino.
Right.
So they have this band PSP. Okay,
right.
Cool.
Thank you.
So Philippe Sace, I was in his jazz trio playing upright.
Holy
when
shit!
He moved to LA. And then
wow.
Yeah, it was super fun. And then I did a few sessions and tracks for him and Simon with that before they formed PSP. It wasn't the band before. I wasn't replaced by Pino. I would be so lucky. But anyway, I did a jazz cruise ship with Philippe Sace trio. And on that cruise, we played like in one of the lounges. It was like a music cruise. And there were big artists that were playing on the big show. And then he had the lounge, and we just played tunes. And I brought my upright. Well, Jonathan Butler is just like the most brightest and exciting and personable person you could meet. And he would come down to the lounge and sit in and sing tunes and play. And he was like, "Where do you live?" He's like, "I love upright. I want you to come, let's play." And I'm like, "I'm in LA." He's like, "Me too." So then he came to a gig that I was doing about a week later back in town. And he said, "I want you to join my band. I'm playing the Cape Town Jazz Festival with Will Kennedy on drums and Greg Filling Games. And it's going to be this huge festival we're doing, and come play." So that was my first gig. So a month later, I was flying to Cape Town to do the Cape Town Jazz Festival. And it was a star-studded event. It was amazing. And that was 2008. And then to this day, I've been playing bass and his music director for all the touring and the stuff that he does. That's
a long relationship.
Yeah, 12 years. He and his family are dear friends, and it's deeper than, it's just one of those that, you know, this is just like this is a commitment, you know. I'm here with him, and so that it's been really, really great. And we have a great working relationship, and it's been beautiful. So that's how that started, and I just never stopped. And it was honestly perfect. So going back to the family thing, I never wanted to tour long periods. And I told my wife, I'm going to be in town, whatever it takes. I don't want to go miss my kids growing up. So Jonathan calls and he's like, "Hey, listen, I want to offer you this, but we don't tour. We just do spot dates throughout the year. So maybe 1 or 2 gigs a month. Can you handle that? Maybe like Friday, you're back Sunday." I was like,
twist
really?
my arm.
So
yeah,
it's perfect in that way,
right,
that it fits into the framework that I had established or wanted, you know, years ago. And so that's another reason. And now I've actually stepped back because I'm kind of doing more sessions and stuff from home. And last year I was supposed to be one of the bass players on Hamilton, and also playing Mean Girls at the Dolby Theater, and that all fell through.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be home more for shows and touring and film scores and whatnot. But Jonathan still fits, and he's still popping in. We do a festival in North Carolina, and then we come home, and it's a beautiful chance to play and to meet other people. That's how I was touring with Kirk Whalum and all these other cats that were in that scene too. Gerald Albright. Yeah, it was fun. And they're fun, just fun. It's not really my favorite genre to play, but it's just a party. And that, as a dad, you know, grunting it out in LA, to go play a jazz festival anywhere with anyone for a weekend is a gift.
Yeah, really. That's great. What was South Africa like? Had you ever? I would assume you never been.
I had never been, and I've since gone back a few times, and it is a gorgeous, incredible city that is right next to extreme poverty and unfairness. So it's not like anything I'd seen before. You can just drive 3 minutes around the corner and it's just shanty towns. And that's how Jonathan grew up. He grew up as one of like 12 kids. He was the youngest, and he had to make money. His mom would bring home a sheep's head, literally, and they would all know how to clean it and eat it. And that was shared bathrooms. Like, that was his experience. Yeah. But then we go back and we stay at the most opulent place, and Gordon Ramsay and Nobu are personally there cooking. And we do a tribute for Mandela, and Mariah Carey is singing over there, and Matt Damon is filming a Invictus with, I mean, it was bananas when the people we hang out with now. So that's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, that is, man. I was in the Dominican Republic once, and it was, it's half the islands of DR, half the islands Haiti, and we got close to the border a couple of times, and I saw very similar things. Women, the 2 kids or 3 kids playing on the floor, pretty much naked. And maybe you had a pair of underwear on. They're literally playing with sticks and stones. Wow. Yeah, and it was
crazy.
Yeah, it was hard to. It was like sad, of course. You see kids having to grow up like that, but that's really wow.
Yeah. But it influenced his playing, and he is another guy like Brian who will play circles around his band, no matter who is in that band. Those guys have this energy live that is just unmatchable, and their charm and their connection to the audience is just so inspiring. And that I love being drawn to artists like that, and that I've been able to play, not somebody who's telling me how to dance and giving me choreography. No. Yeah. I'll play like you play, and let's go have fun. I love those environments. And Brian and Jonathan, they curate those environments. They just play. It's music, It's fun.
That's great, man. It's a great experience you had.
Yeah.
Melody Gadot.
Yeah, Melody Gardot. Wow. That was a game changer for me. I had been playing a steady gig at this hotel called Casa del Mar in Santa Monica. They have a gorgeous, huge lobby, and they had jazz there. I would play there every Thursday for about a year. And one time, the guitarist, Mitchell Long, who's an amazing guitarist, he brought a friend in. The friend came and sat in. His name was Chuck. Chuck played drums. Chuck happened to be Melody Gardot's MD and was just in town doing something. He came and sat in. We had a connection right away. He remembered me. And a year or 2 later, Larry Klein is producing Melody Gardot's next record, and for some reason asks Chuck, who in LA do you want to play with? I hadn't seen Chuck in about a year or 2 since then. We hadn't even talked. And he just reached out and was like, would you be interested? I remember this was like in October, September, and I remember having family people were over visiting, and I was down in Orange County visiting my family, and they were like, can you come up this week? And I was like, this Larry Klein he's producing this. I have to drop everything. This is an opportunity that I'll never get. And so I jumped in the car and I went up there, and I auditioned for Melody, kind of jammed with her at her apartment, and then did the sessions. I met Larry the first day, and I was really nervous, and he was digging. So I was playing only upright on the first day, and it was Melody's band, and we had been rehearsing a few days, but I'd never met Larry. So I didn't know what he was going to think. But listen, I've known Larry Klein my whole life, my whole bass playing career, from Bass Player magazines to the stuff he did with Joni to I've been a fan of his, to the Peter Gabriel stuff, Tracy Chapman. I'm very aware of him, and right. And somebody that I've emulated or wanted to emulate as a bass player, because I've just always loved his approach. So it was a huge deal to me. All that to say, I was masking all of that. That he throws me a few compliments. He throws me a few directions. He was very nice, and the ice was broken. So I've always told my wife that the first call is great, but the second call is the one that you want.
Yeah.
Because that's where you've made the connection. So I go back the next day. I think we were in the studio for 10 days.
Oh, okay.
And so I go back the second day and I'm setting up. I get there early because that's how I'm wired. I'm always the first guy there. I'm also the first one to leave, probably. But that's a different story.
You get a pass if you're the first guy in, though.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm setting up on day 2, and Larry comes over to me and he's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing October 10th through the 13th?" And I'm like, "Nothing." I didn't even look. And he's like, "I have another record I'd like you to play on." And I was like, "Yeah, cool. Let me check and I'll talk to you after I'm done setting up." And I'm still getting chills. Like literally, it was like a dream come true. I ran out to my car. I was teary, and I called my wife, and I'm like, "He just asked me for the second call." That turned into 6 records in the next 12 months. It was one after the other. Vinny Colaiuta, Dean Parks, Larry Goldings, and a slew of other.
Nobody good.
James Gadsden.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was bananas. And that changed my life, and that opened up everything. That was 2015. So I'm kind of pushing fast forward here, but yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, wow.
So that was to go back to your Melody Gardot, she was the catalyst, and that was the catalyst to connect with Larry and to lead to all of the other things that I've done with him and that crew. And it was all because he had a broken finger. Larry would have played,
but he had a broken finger.
Yeah. And he would have called probably Dave Pilch to do the upright, because that's usually who he uses. But I got in, and
he just asked your buddy, "Who do you want to play with?" Yeah. And
so, and I want to just say for everybody that's like trying to get into the scene or listening, like when you have the time to do steadies or to go play for $25 at a coffee shop, or when you have that margin in your life, take advantage of every one of those, because it goes back to that networking and meeting people. And I would not have gotten that call if I had not been doing that crappy steady jazz gig in a hotel lobby. You know what I mean? But it changed my life years later. So, I always remember that. And I still thank Chuck, the drummer, to this day. I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm not paying you any residuals, because I made a ton of money doing records that one year. And it was all because he remembered me and we had a connection. So
great story, cool. Man.
I also have another funny story about that.
Yeah.
If you have the time.
Of course.
About Vinny. So Larry Klein was one level to me. And I was doing this record with Melody, and Chuck was the drummer on it. Well, like the last day, Larry said, "Can you come in tomorrow?" And he's like, "I just want to get some overdubs and stuff." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And that was all he said.
Right.
So I come into we were at East West. No, we were at the Village. And I come into the studio, all happy-go-lucky, and Vinny Colaiuta is sitting on the sofa talking to Larry. And so I'm like, "Oh, hey, yeah, again, hero of my life, right. Since I've been 12. And he's one of those guys. He's arguably the greatest drummer alive, right? Yeah. And he's sitting on the sofa. And so I'm like, oh, he must be doing a session here, because Chuck is doing we're doing overdubs. And then they're talking, and I'm just kind of sitting there, because I'm not going to say, "Excuse me." And then Larry's very patient. He turns, he's like, "Dan, hey, meet Vinny." Hey, Vinny, what's up? Nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. He's like, "Cool." And he's like, "Yeah, so I wanted to go in a different direction on one of these tunes, and Vinny's going to play. I just want you guys to you play electric, and we'll just try this groove." And I was like, "Oh, same thing." I ran out to my car. I was just calming down. They were getting drum sounds. I called Michelle. Vinny freaking Colaiuta I'm about to do a session with him. Like, my 13-year-old self just shit his pants.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
right,
like
totally.
insane. I gather myself, which it took a minute. I like seriously was like, this is where you are. Just play like you are. It's gonna be cool. I go back in, I sit down, and as you do it, Vinny's in the room just kind of getting a sound and playing a groove. And so I just kind of picked up my bass and I started playing
with him.
And we started playing together.
Okay.
And it was sort of like a groove, like a D'Angelo, funky. He was just playing real greasy, and so was I, muted, like just not jazz. I was on electric, and we were just kind of grooving. It was kind of this vibe. And we sat there for a good 2 or 3 minutes. Neither one of us stopped. And Larry, now looking back, Larry was like, I want you guys to just play and just feel each other out for a minute.
Okay.
So I was just having the time of my life playing with Vinny, and he's so good, and he wasn't doing anything special. He just pocket, which is the best part of him. And then eventually kind of like, all right, guys, come on in. We got good sounds. And then Vinny from the drum set, this is the first thing he says. He's like, I don't usually fuck on the first date, but we just fucked.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Oh my gosh, I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And
wow,
that was it. And so we did, that, and he was on almost every one of those records. We did that next year. Lizz Wright and Candace Springs and Lang Lang, and he was the drummer. So Larry loved us together while Larry was recovering his finger, and I had the time of my life playing with that guy.
That's amazing, man. What a great story.
Yeah, sorry to curse, but that was what he said.
Dude, this is the Wild West. You can say whatever the hell you want, dude. Promise you. Wow, that's a really nice story. Have you gotten to play with him since then?
Yeah, we've done a few things in sessions, and we also did a tribute concert to oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the Keith Emerson. Yeah. So with Brian Auger, actually, there was a big tribute that was filmed a few years back.
Yeah, with Mark, what's his name?
Lukather was on it. Like everybody was there. It was bananas.
There was a guy, I had him on. I'm sorry, I can't. It's embarrassing. Mark, he played with Keith.
Okay. He was a guitarist.
Yeah, I can't think of his name now. Okay. I thought it was small. I'm sorry, man. This is
that's okay. But we've run into each other. I mean, he runs in a different circle, but we have played and touched base and our Instagram friends. And I'm cool. Looking forward to playing again. Yeah, it was great. He's an amazing human and a genius.
That's awesome, man. Great story. You played with some good drummers, man.
I'm so lucky. Kurt Pescara, he's just like one of the best ever. And we did jingles. Like we worked with this production company, the Wojan Brothers, and we would do jingles like every month for different commercials. And
those are great.
Jack in the Box. Yeah, they're great. And it was either Kurt Pescara or Kenny Arnoff.
Oh yeah.
Those were the two people that they called. That's and I was cool. Like, new on the scene, and I'm like playing with heroes again, and just insane.
I had Kenny on the show here. He's a pretty funny guy.
Oh, he's a treat.
Speaking of heroes, Lyle Workman, who played drums with you on that? Because he had a bunch of great
that track was Toss Panos.
Okay, great.
One of the most amazing and underrated drummers on earth, for sure. That was Toss Panos, and Lyle, I think Babko actually probably introduced me to Lyle. I'm not quite sure how it came up, but I believe I met him because of upright bass. I think he needed some upright bass or something, and we met, and then we did a live jam a few times. We've played like in different contexts. The Burt Wonderstone was a big film score at Fox. And then I've done stuff for him I think he did a Netflix show called Love or True Love or something.
Yeah.
Played on some of that.
Yes.
Did some Facebook jingles for him. There's been.
So he's done a lot of work with Lyle.
Yeah, and he's just amazing, and his mind is incredible.
Yeah,
as a guitarist, like anybody if anybody hasn't heard his new record, like it's such a treat for the ear. It's just like you get lost in like, what am I even listening to? It's like a journey. It's like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings for music. It's like, where are we going?
Yeah.
It's so cool. But then he can play guitar with Sting and just murder it, you know, just like in that lane. You know, he's so good at his musical scope is so wide, and yet he can just like choose something and just be incredibly special in it. So
yeah, he's one of the most
working with
talented
that
people
guy.
I've ever met. Yeah, really smart guy, music wise.
Yeah.
Any cool stories about on that record, The Uncommon Measures?
Yeah. You know what's okay? So the tune that I played on was a tune that Toss and I had recorded about 6 years before.
With Lyle.
With Lyle. And we did it at Toss's studio, and it hadn't been flushed out. It was just bass, drums, and guitar. And so I remember like going through, I think it's like a 13 or 11-minute song, and no part repeats. It's just section to section, odd time to odd time, full, just crazy chaos the whole time. And so I think I had improvised this part in many sections. Anyway, we forgot about it. We recorded it, whatever. 6 years later, he's like, hey, I'm redoing that tune. I need you to come and replay your part. And I was like, oh, no.
Was that Arc of Life? Is that the song?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay.
From 6 years ago, can you relearn it and essentially play it, because it's part of like, you know, the whole orchestration now.
Right.
So I remember like transcribing myself and just trying to relearn that line.
Transcribe yourself. That's funny.
Yeah, totally. Which I've done like a few times. And then go back and play it at Lyle's. And we did like a 3-hour session, and he's very particular, and he is just methodical, and it's so fun to work with him because he knows exactly what he wants and how he wants it to sound. And so that was a super fun treat doing that with him. Yeah, amazing record.
Well, you must be super adaptable and very on top of your shit, because Simon Phillips is extremely demanding. I mean, he's and you know, he gives whatever he's asking for, you know, in all fairness. And same with Lyle. Lyle's like, he's giving you 110%, and he wants that in return, you know. So I mean, your adaptability speaks for itself just by the people you've worked with, man.
Yeah, it's always a challenge for sure, but it is it's so rewarding when I, you know, leave something that's so different from the day before and everybody's happy, you know.
Yeah,
that feels good.
And just one more, Robben Ford. I had Robben on the show a while back, and you know, he's had a cast of great talents as well. How'd you wind up connecting with Robben?
Guess who?
Larry Klein?
No, Babko.
So
yeah, again,
oh my God.
Jeff has been so generous in his support of connecting me to rad people. And this goes back like probably 25 years ago. But Jeff was playing with Robben and Toss, and I was in town, and Jeff and I, you know, we've been very close for a long time. So
how did you meet Jeff?
I met Jeff through at Cal State Northridge. We started a group. Jeff was living with, I think, Mike Elizondo, and at the time, and Trevor Lawrence Jr. was across the street. It was this incredible music hub of people, and we were looking to form a trio with like some friends, and I think Jeff came up as a pianist or something, and we just started playing, and we hit it off. Like there was 4 of us. Jerry Moore was the tenor player, Derek Siverud was the drummer, and Jeff and me. And so we still keep in touch. We did a record. It was really fun. But Jeff and I kind of maintained a friendship out of that. Actually, we all did. And that's how Jeff was like, oh, Robben needs a bass player for a tour. Toss and I know this guy. We both like him. Come in. And so I had to come in and audition, and you know, it was fun. And I got the gig, and I toured with, did a few tours with him, and I think I played on a tune or two, something. But that was all with Toss, and that it was just trio, and that was so fun because I was coming out of sort of like the 5-string fusion jazz kind of thing, and going into blues rock, like don't, you know, this is a different vibe. And so I had to learn that. And Robben taught me, and he doesn't mince words, and he's very direct, and he's, you know, he likes fine things, and he doesn't like, he just needs preparation. And I remember that tour because I hadn't memorized the music, and I had lead sheets on a music stand.
Right.
And just because it was like, I don't know what, I was intimidated by him, to be honest. Like I was nervous.
Totally get it.
Yeah, he's just it was hard. And I didn't feel like, man, he wasn't ever like, you're awesome, like this is gonna be great. You know, he was always like a test, sort of, it felt like. And I didn't do a good job. I had lead sheets and charts that I had to kind of rely on, and I wasn't really in the music. And I think that kind of hurt my presence and my comfortability.
Yeah.
Looking back. But we made some great music, and we had some really good times. But it was always difficult to gauge the level of happiness, or, you know, with what you were doing. And so it wasn't I don't think it was my strongest tour, but I certainly learned how to prepare. And ever since that, I've made it a point to memorize and get into somebody's music if they're calling me to come out and do a tour, and don't be the guy with the music stand at the jazz festival playing with Robben Ford. You know, I mean, I understand cheat sheets or whatever, but you got to be on your game. And I wasn't on my game with him as much as I'd like to have been.
It's hard too, though, when you have so much, you know, the guy's catalog is huge, and and he is intimidating.
Miles,
I get it. I get it. You know, so it's not the easiest environment either. So but I totally get it.
But we played off and on. In fact, a few years ago, we just played at the Big Potato with a guitarist from Iceland, with Toss and somebody else. I forget who else. And it was incredible, and one of the best gigs we've ever had. And he was super. That's cool. Loving and happy, and we had a great experience the last time. So, you know, I think the door is still open, and I think we'll probably make music again too. He's one of the best guitarists ever. I just absolutely love hearing him and playing with him.
Was any chance the guy from Iceland was Ahmad Maru?
No,
okay.
It was like Bjorn something.
Interesting. Okay,
I forget his name. I couldn't say it anyway.
Yeah, there's not too many guys from Finland playing here.
Yeah.
Okay, Broadway. I mentioned that earlier. You've got to be a hell of a sight reader to get those gigs, because you go in the pit, it's like usually limited rehearsal, and it's like play this, and again, it's all scripted out.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in playing on Broadway? And you've played on all top shows, man. This isn't. I mean, Hamilton, Wicked, Frozen Light. Those are like Book of Mormon. They're all massive shows.
Right. Yeah, man, it's super fun. You know, like, first of all, going back to my dad being a choral director, like, he took us to Broadway shows. I grew up in Philly, and he would take me and my sister to drive up to New York just to see a show and come back. And it was the most amazing thing. I think Peter Pan was the first one I saw. So I've been a fan of the theater, and my dad was an off-Broadway actor. Like, I've always been into that music. Great. I think it's amazing. So there's that. But, you know, I kind of figured out a way to get into the Broadway scene by trying to associate myself with the person, Trey Henry, who was basically had that gig on lockdown. Okay. And he was just a few years older than me, and he still is. And he's one of the best bass players I know. And he's one of the most amazing bass players in town. Another guy who can just do everything, but stays real low under the radar. But anyway, we met, and he said, listen, off the bat, he's like, first of all, a Broadway show never sits here for this long. It's going to be here for like 2 years. So I need help. I can't do 8 shows a week for 2 years. Right. Even though the money's really good, I can't do it. So I'm going to have you and a few other bass players come in, because it can't just be me and you. It'll still be too much. No problem. Said, second thing to know, I said, I've been playing Broadway shows for 20 years here in LA. This is the hardest show for a bass player I've ever played. So you're coming in on the hardest show. You're going from upright, arco, and pits to fretless, exposed high melodies with the vocals, to 5-string specific parts, and back and forth with pedals and reading and page turns. And it's going to be really, really hard. Okay. So it's like, okay, so here's how I practiced for it. He gave me the DVD of the conductor camera, which we all get. And you get a conductor camera. So you just watch this guy kind of just conducting you. And he gave me the book. And he said, go into your room, blacken everything out, turn off all the lights except for a music stand, and put all your basses and set up everything exactly like the show would be down here. So your electric goes here with this pedal connected to this, your fretless goes here, your upright, your bow, everything's that's here. And then play the show for 30 times. It's a 2.5 hour show.
Holy shit.
Play it 30 times in a row and you won't have any problems. So I had about a month. And so I didn't play it 30 times, but I did practice it like that for about 10.
Yeah.
And because I was a comfortable reader and he was just really, and he said, listen, I can bring you in, but I can't promise you that it's just going to be steady work. We're going to try this out. The other thing about Broadway is there's no rehearsal. When you come in, there's no other bass player there. You are playing the show by yourself for the first time and you can't make mistakes.
Right. That's what's so hard about this.
That's what's so hard. So, and usually your second show is your hardest because the ice is broken and your guard's down. And so I went in and luckily things worked out, but that's how I got in. And so once I was Trey's sub on Broadway, anytime he needed me, because I could play all the basses and do a good job and show up on time, that's how it started. And once you're in the contractors, for that show, hopefully if you don't mess it up, then you're going to be one of the subs that comes in. And so that's how it has worked. So that's how all that stuff happened. And then the contractor at the Pantages Theater, which is where all these shows come, they changed. And so there's a new contractor as of a few years ago, and he's been calling me for different things as well. So luckily I still have that as a source, but it is one of the most challenging and most fun things to do as a musician is to play a show. And it's a whole different mindset, and you're not thinking about creating or being an artist. But for me, I'm thinking about hitting bullseyes with every note. I'm just thinking about how can I be perfect? I don't want to be even noticed. I don't want to be seen. I just want to be perfect and just be a part of the whole fabric that makes up this whole experience. And that's the challenge, and that's fun. And it wouldn't sustain me if that's all I did. I'd lose my freaking mind.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's the camaraderie with a gig like that? I would imagine it's just you play your shit and go home. Yeah, because it's exhausting, isn't it?
It's exhausting, and it takes a lot of focus. And the musicians, if there's 2 shows in a day, some of them nap in their car in between. Like, it's an awkward amount of time, but you can't really like go out and have a drink, and you can't have a meal because then you're like your stomach and like all this stuff you have to think about. So it's very stressful as a musician. So there isn't a lot of hang. You come in, 30 minutes before the show, and you're out of there before the audience has cleared the theater,
Right.
And you're completely focused, the whole time. So
how many shows a week?
8 shows. So you have Monday's dark.
Okay.
And then you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are all at 8. And then Saturdays and Sundays have 2 shows each, a 2 and an 8.
So you're playing 6 days a week.
8 shows a week.
That's why they pay so well. It's a brutal gig. And
the cool thing about the way it works too is if you get doubles. So one bass plus a fretless plus another bass plus a pedal, you're making kind of a percentage of it on top of everything. So
that's great.
Those gigs can pay well, especially for a percussionist or a guitarist who has 5 or 6 instruments to play. They're making really good money.
That's great, man. Yeah. I mean, you should, because it's a demand. I know, I think I was telling you, I talked to a lot of guys in New York who work Broadway and they love it.
Right.
And of course they were all miserable because of the pandemic. I mean, here they have this great gig. It's extremely demanding, and then it's goodbye, as was all musicians.
Rough.
But that's a tough gig, man. I could see going crazy. So how long do you still do that now once in a while, or?
The theaters are opening up on August 17th, and Hamilton, I think, is opening. So I'll probably be in there. Yeah. I'm not the main guy on Hamilton. Another Mike Valerio is an amazing bassist. He's going to be doing that. But I'm sure I'll be coming in and subbing. And I'm hoping it comes back to it because it's so fun.
Yeah. Thank you. That was interesting, man.
Yeah.
What would you say, Dan, top 3 musical experiences you've had and why? Could be studio, could be touring, whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I think, that experience with Vinny and just playing, even before he said anything or the funny comment, I just was so happy that
I don't usually fuck on the first date.
Yeah.
I call bullshit on that anyway, but
yeah, exactly. You're right. I would love that we had a connection and we were feeling it in the right spot, because that to me was special. That was really cool. So that was a big highlight for me. And I think also just touring, the fact that I get to tour and just play with other people is always a highlight. Like, just to get out and to make music and stuff is such a fun thing to, touring. But when I was my first gig after Tony Danza, one of my first big gigs was Taylor Hicks, and he won American Idol. I don't know if you remember him. He was the gray-haired guy that sang like old soul,
I remember the name. Yeah, Taylor Hicks.
Taylor Hicks. Yeah, he won. I think it was like the second or third year. I don't know. Anyway, I ended up getting the gig for his promo tour. So after he won Idol, we did all of the TV shows. Leno at the time. It was 2006. It was like Leno, Good Morning America, Regis and Kathy, or maybe it was Regis and Kelly. I forget who it was. Anyway, we did all these shows, and then we ended up doing the halftime show at the Orange Bowl with
that had to be cool. Down in Miami.
Yeah. And that was a special highlight, because you don't get to play a football stadium as a musician very often unless you're doing high level touring. And just to feel that audience, and to have that experience was pretty cool. That was a marker for sure. And I think the third time where I felt most out of my league but most educated was this Patti Austin tour that we did. We basically flew to Tokyo and we toured. We did basically a week at the Blue Note and then the week at the Cotton Club or Billboard Live or something. And the band was Greg Fillinganes was the MD, Trevor Lawrence Jr. was the drummer, Dave DeLome was the second keyboard player, Paul Jackson Jr. was on guitar, and then it was Lynn Fidmont and Lamont Van Hook, 3 background singers, and her show, and then there was me.
Yeah.
And her show is she could just go into tunes. She could just any Michael Jackson tune, any Stevie Wonder tune, and that band, all of those guys, with the exception of myself, could know it. I'm just come from a different place musically.
Yeah. When
we were playing her show, everything was cool. But a couple of times they hey guys, let's do Michael Jackson from Off the Wall. What's the obscure tune on that what's that B-side?
Yeah.
And
Paul played on that record. Yeah. So it's a little unfair. Yeah.
Totally. I have no clue. So there were a few times after gigs where Greg would pull me aside and say, you need to learn this record. You need to learn this record. You need to learn this record. And instead of offending me, it really was so kind of him to be the next time you're in this environment with these cats and that come from this vibe, who are maybe 10 years older than you can fit in. And be sure I learned, just like with Robben and sheet music, at a jazz festival, I threw that stuff away and I learned those records, and I came back and now I can play those tunes if somebody calls them, and I have a better understanding of where that music comes from and how the bass fits in, all that stuff. It was a huge education. It was also probably the best band I've ever played with.
Yeah. Just
those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just insane. And it was one of the best tours I've ever done. Yeah. That was fun.
Very cool. Philly, you grew up in Philly. What was growing up like for you?
Philly it was interesting because I left when I was 12. So I didn't really have a connection to the city until after I started playing music and getting into jazz and becoming a bass player officially. I mean, I started playing bass in Philly at an elementary school and on just classical. And then when we moved to LA, the jazz guy in junior high was like, does anyone play bass? I did, like a few years ago. But knowing the rich heritage of amazing bass players that come out of Philadelphia and the scene there, and then having my family there so that we would go back and visit when we were, you know, as we grew older, and my grandparents, both sides were from there. And so it was awesome. And I loved, now, you know, I still kind of claim that, even though I moved to LA, I still kind of claim and resonate with that spirit of Philadelphia. And, you know, both, just musically and from a bass perspective, just have a lot of honor and respect for, you know, the cats that have come out of there. And hopefully, you know, maybe one day I'll be counted in that list.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. What made your parents move to LA? That's not a common thing. Like, you're like East Coast, it's just not common to say, hey, let's move to LA, you know, when you're an adult with kids.
Yeah, totally. My dad had a brother who was living in LA at the time, and they had a family, and he was always loving it. And my mom really hated the winters, and she hated the snow, and she just was tired of it. And she would have to go to work when my dad, he was a teacher. So if it snowed, and we had snow days back then, he would be home with us, and she'd have to go into work. And
you said she was a nurse.
She was a nurse. At the time. And so he's like, all right, let's go to LA. There's a lot of opportunity out there. My brother's out there. So we moved out there. And my dad wanted to be done with teaching. So he ended up starting to produce shows at dinner theaters. So there was this thing called the Young Americans, and they would go around, and they would, like, this Baxter Street dinner theater, waitresses would be the singers and dancers. They'd bring you your food, then they'd do a show. And my dad produced those shows for a little bit. And they had a rhythm section, and then it was fun. I loved it. I actually worked there later on as a bass player. But my dad ended up getting let go. They went back to another group, and my dad ended up going back to teaching.
Okay.
So, and my mom went.
That's too bad, man. He probably was like doing what he loved.
Yeah. Yeah. And he wanted to work at Disney. He really wanted to have a job working in the entertainment area at Disney, but that didn't pan out. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
But yeah, that's how that started. And he moved us to LA, and we're so much better for it. I think it's the experience out here, and the lifestyle is just great. You know, it's been awesome.
Nice weather, especially compared to Philly, man.
Yeah.
Low points. What were some of the low points or dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I think this last year, COVID, you know, we were in rehearsals for Hamilton, the musical, in March, the first week of March last year. And that's when it all shut down. And so then all of the tours that I had with Jonathan, they were all shut down. And so for like a few months, I didn't really work. And, you know, that was hard. Like I said earlier, it was just kind of trying to figure out my worth and what was happening, and realizing that it was happening to everybody, and it wasn't personal, was a little bit lighter, but it still kind of just brought some anxiety and depression that I hadn't really dealt with before.
Sure.
Having a pretty heavy workload, you know. So I didn't know what to do with myself. I was getting angry with my kids. We started drinking more, you know, like every
dude, that's normal when you got 3 kids.
Totally.
That's not COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just having 3 kids.
Yeah, exactly. Very true. So I'm, you know, now this year, just, you know, June, July, you know, right now it's starting to kind of feel like a slow time for me. It did in 2019, which is cool. I'm doing sessions from home. I'm much more set up now. I totally, you know, I educated myself on how to track and got invested in mics and gear. And now I'm doing some albums and film scores from home, which has been fantastic. Great. And with, you know, great results. Everybody's been cool so far and happy, and that's fun. And it's good because I can offer them a lot, like they can get their upright here, they can get their bow here, they can get their funk here, they can get, you know, a lot of different styles that, you know, just because that's kind of how I'm wired. That was a hard point. And then, you know, like just some crash gigs, like remember first moving to LA and getting called for a jazz gig with these really heavy guys, and just having the, you know, the real book out and trying to manage these tunes, and these guys are yelling at me, literally the piano player yelling, if you don't know the chords, lay out. Oh, it was a 4-hour,
that's stressful as hell.
4-set jazz gig at a club called Jack's in Glendale. Literally the worst gig I've ever had. Just unbelievable. Just felt so bad. I would sit out on the curb and just like try and pretend. I almost contemplated packing up. It probably would have been better had I left. But I ended up working later on with some of those musicians in their bands and being called for sessions like 10 years later. Yeah. So there was a redemption to it, but
good.
I never let that happen again. Yeah. So
wow.
bad. So, you know, like I sometimes you just got to crash, you know, you just got to take a hit and learn from it. And in the moment it's horrible, but it's a story I've been telling for 30 years now. As something that refined me. You know? So
you can only do what you could do.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you mentioned about drinking, because alcohol, as you probably know, was one of the industries that crushed it.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, because everybody was home and drink, because nobody had to wake up.
Yeah. Zoom and alcohol.
Yeah.
Last year.
Zoom, alcohol, firearms, you know, there was, you know, delivery services, you know, all these delivery companies a lot of them went public.
Totally.
Yeah. It was weird. The things that took off, man.
I know. It's a new world. Now, some of us don't want to go back all the way, you know, we're like, let's keep some things.
Well, a lot of people like that. You know, a lot of people are like, you know, making peace working at home. I've spoken to a lot of people that had the same mindset as you. They were like, in the beginning, they were freaking out. And then now you spent a lot of time with your family, but I had a lot of guys that have not. And they were like, man, I really loved being home.
Yeah.
You know, they may not have been home 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's all across the board.
Yep. This was the first year that I was mentioning Jonathan Butler. I've been touring with him for like 12 years. Last year was the first year that I was home and I wasn't touring. And it was so weird because my family was used to me in and out every month, you know, from about April to October. And so to be home, like, and I didn't get those, you know, I didn't get those breaks. I didn't get that escape. So I was like, what am I doing? You know, I didn't realize how much it served me and helped my emotional health to go on those tours just to get a break from being home.
Well, it's probably worse now because you got 3 young kids. And like, let's face it, it's tough enough to get kids to enjoy and pay attention in a classroom.
Yeah.
To get them on Zoom.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. You know, I mean, and your both parents are home. I think that was a stressful situation for everybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. In fact, when that happened, one of the first things I did was like say, okay, thank you very much. All my kids are older, because I couldn't imagine.
Right.
And they were all like deemed necessary industries, you know, so I love them to death, but they didn't have to move back home. It wouldn't have been any problem at all. I would have been happy, but it was like just less stress. You know, knowing that, okay, that's cool, you know, but I feel for anybody with young kids, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anyone you haven't played with yet that you'd like to play with?
Yeah, I feel like I've never played with Larry Goldings.
Oh, the keyboard player. Yeah.
Yeah. And John Schofield.
Okay.
If you asked me, like, I mean, Larry Goldings, I've played with Larry in sessions, but I'm thinking like when you say play, like my mind immediately goes to jazz and like
on a tour
in improvisational, like creative atmosphere. I don't think about like a session player, but John Schofield is probably my favorite musician on earth.
Okay.
I just absolutely adore where he comes from in every way he approaches music. I love how diverse he is. I love how funky he is. I love how he has his own voice. You can hear him. I love how he sounds better than anybody on any record he plays on. You know, like to me, he has that thing.
Yeah.
So I would love to play with Schofield. And I almost did, because Schofield and Robben were doing a tour. And they actually played at the Hollywood Bowl together with Toss. But it was Andy Hess on bass that they had brought in, because Andy had been playing with Robben at the time. And I was really hoping they were going to go upright and, you know, maybe come in and meet him that way and play, because it was close. But I still have faith that maybe one day we'll play. It would be a dream come true to play with John Scofield.
That's
sure.
cool. Well, I'm glad we put it out here now, man. Let's maybe the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you never know.
My friend Gerald Clayton plays piano with him, or did the last record, Combo 66, which is gorgeous. So now I have two people that have played with him. So now I'm really close to. We'll see.
You're just closing on the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's right.
And he's a good guy. I had him on the show here. He's like a New York staple, sort of.
Yeah. I can't imagine him being just wonderful or anything less than wonderful.
No, he's a really nice guy. He's into photography too. He takes he takes a lot of cool pictures on Instagram.
Oh, I have to follow.
Tell me this is like an unfair question, sort of favorite musicians you've enjoyed playing with. You've played with so many.
Yeah. Well, again, going to Vinny, as far as drums, like I know where his scope is. Like he can play anything, and we've all heard him do. But to experience him play like a no fills brush, like eighth note groove for 3.5 minutes on its like as we're tracking, and with Larry, like Larry doesn't stop takes. Like we always do full takes, even if somebody messes up. That's a rule. So we're always going to play the tune in its entirety, so we get that full scope, that linear vibe.
Yeah.
And which is something I love to do. But Vinny, like he just it's perfect. It's just perfect. It doesn't feel mechanical. It feels human, but it just is unreal. And so he's one of the best ones I've ever experienced in terms of drums. Favorite musicians. I think that spirit that, that Jonathan Butler carries as a performer, I haven't really seen matched. Like he just is so special live. He comes across recorded a different way, but I think live he is where his magic is. And it's just so fun to every night just hear him play. He's one of the only guys that can play guitar and sing just without any, there's no limit, there's no governor on his, like he can just play a jazz tune, he can play a groove, like the African stuff, his vocals like just calls out something in me that's so special. Like he's just a special musician and a special voice. I love working with him and hearing him. So he's probably one of my favorite artists to back up. If
is he playing acoustic only, or is he playing acoustic?
No, he plays electric and acoustic, a bunch of D'Angelicos. He has a huge collection of those, and he plays nylon string, steel string, and then a bunch of different electrics. Amazing guitarist. Let me think here. I think working with Larry is he's a musician and a producer. And while we haven't really worked together as musicians per se, like, in a band context, under his direct, like, he's just taught me so much about simplicity and about bass lines and about framing a song and how the bass functions. And he's taken the time to talk to me, and we've gone out to lunch. We've had these really pivotal, special conversations that have really helped me to, hone what I'm doing and filter what I'm doing. So I feel like that qualifies him as one of the most, special musicians and relationships in my life, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to have a mentor like that. A guy whispering in your ear, for sure, looking out for you.
Yeah. And we have a friendship too that, just goes beyond the studio and just randomness here and there. And certain inside jokes and humor that are really strange to my wife, but it's fun. He's just a really, really sweet guy and an incredible producer.
Very
Love
cool.
how he hears music.
Do you have you told me your worst gig ever. Give me what's the last thing you listened to musically? Like
Tower of Power.
Right on.
In the slot. I listened to Tower of Power. My band director, he was a drummer down in Orange County, and he loved Tower of Power, and he was like, it's like, that's the best, and Rocco, and I have not stopped listening to Tower of Power. Has been in rotation in my life since high school. And I listen to those records over and over again. And they're a constant source of inspiration and groove. Like, just makes me happy to listen to that stuff.
That's cool.
So yeah, Tower of Power for sure. And then Snarky Puppy, probably there's like a correlation. I'm into those horn bands and those like funky horn band kind of stuff. It lifts my spirits when I need it.
I've had, I think, like 5 or guys from Snarky. Those guys are so talented and they're so enthusiastic about what they're doing musically.
Yeah, they're so great, inspirational.
Very much.
Yeah.
Top 3 Desert Island discs, just for this minute.
Yeah.
And in no particular order.
Yeah, well, probably Back to Oakland from Tower of Power, because I just love the way that album sounds and feels. It's so great. Probably Inner Visions or Talking Book, Stevie Wonder. Those 2 albums, they just have like a cultural imprint on me. I feel like they just are amazing. So one of those. And then probably Keith Jarrett's live, or I think it's called Alive. It's like a double disc trio with his trio. I think whenever I need to mellow out or really just go back to the heart of improvisation, or just like, I think Keith Jarrett does it for me. And I can listen to his trio and the way he plays a song and phrases. It's sort of inspirational and healing. So I feel like if I had Tower of Power, Stevie Wonder, and Keith Jarrett, I feel like I would
survive.
Satisfy at least till my life ran out. I should probably have a Schofield record in there, but I can't pick one, so I can't. I would just need all of it.
Like a Schofield box set.
Yeah, I would need a box set. Yeah. Although I do love Grace Under Pressure is one of my favorites, an older one that Charlie played on. That's really rad with Joey Barron and this horns. It's really special, and I love the songs on it. And Time on My Hands is another one that has Jack DeJohnette at the end of just going bananas on this funk tune. It's really funny. But Grace Under Pressure would probably be my Schofield album.
All righty. Tell me something you want that you don't have right now. And it could be something like physically tangible, or it could be like a way of thinking, something behavioral, whatever.
I think something that I don't have that I would want is an understanding that that I don't need to strive to make things work. I feel like there's some part of my brain that is always on, that's like, you got to make it happen. You got to make it happen. And especially as a father, I'm being a little bit vulnerable here, but as a father and as a husband, you have a house and all these responsibilities and cars and stuff. And you're just like, you're just a bass player. Like, you're literally supporting this as a bass player. Like, are you going to be okay? And it's like, man, I gotta, getting older, younger people coming into town, like certain people playing with people that you used to play with. Like, there's all this stuff that kind of goes on probably in an artist's mind. And I don't quite have a grasp yet. At the same time, I can look back and know that, I'm living the dream, literally, like the dream that I had of wanting a family and be able to play music, making a living and supporting a family. Like, this is what I've always wanted. So I can look at it and be like, oh, I'm like, this is what I want. This is it. But at the same time, it's like, you're just a bass player. It's, good luck. Keep it up. Who's calling you next? And especially after the pandemic, that was really hard, because it was like, oh crap, maybe this is over. Maybe this did change. But I'd like to possess the understanding that it's not up to me. Like, this stuff doesn't just come crashing down. You have a momentum. You have to trust. For me, it's in God. And yeah. I have that faith that He's driving this. He's my manager. Like, my hands are off. I got to do my due diligence. But for me, I'm just trusting in Him. And that I have to work on that. It's a daily choice, because sometimes it's like, oh crap, it's like, trust you. I got you. You know, it's going to be okay.
Man, thank you for sharing that. I will tell you, lots, probably 75% of people I've spoken to have the same thought. Yeah, it's recently I had Danny Korchmar on, and he put it most succinctly. He said, every gig I have I think it's my last one.
Yeah.
And he goes, and sometimes it is, but another one comes up eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
totally.
Yeah. And one of the things that a buddy of mine told me about a year and a half ago, I don't know if this will help at all, because it helped me a lot. He said, don't be part of the results committee. And I was like, and I said, you are right. I'm going to surrender everything to my higher power, whatever that is for anybody. It's your personal choice, you know?
Sure.
And it took so much pressure off me, because I'm like, you know what? Whatever, all I could do is the work. Yeah. Of course, I want good results, but I'm not part of the results. I know that's not in my power.
Right.
And it really freed me up. Like I know now, if something works, great. If something doesn't, that just means I should go take another adventure.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not easy, but it's that help. It freed me.
Takes the pressure off. Right. Yeah.
I'm not responsible for that. It's like my higher power is responsible for that, you know? Exactly. And it really has, helped me. I just wanted to pass it along. Everybody has their own way, but that's was great.
I appreciate that.
It was just, it was helpful to me. It was like, wow, this is not my, like you mentioned, you have kids and you have so many responsibilities, and I just freed myself from one. And that's like a good thing to do, whatever the responsibility is. When you free yourself from it, it's like, that's what everybody thinks of when they think about their childhood. It's not being a child. It's being free from responsibility that felt so good. It's like, you didn't have to pay your mortgage. You didn't have bills. You didn't have to pay electric. You didn't have to raise children when you're 11, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And that's heavy shit if you take all that seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? Yeah. For sure. So I thank you, man. That was I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
What's the one thing that you're proudest or most grateful for doing or not doing, both in your personal life and your professional life?
Well, I'm most proud of my family, and that, I have healthy kids and a healthy marriage, and, that's always been, a top priority for me above my career. So I'm proudest of that. And I think alongside of that I've been able to do it being a musician is equally cool. I was just telling my wife too, like the other day, like I wish I would have, not wish I would have. I'm just like, it didn't matter what I was doing, going back to the diversity. Like, I didn't care as long as I was making money doing music and we were okay. I have to be an artist, or I have to have this, or I'm not going to do it at all. Like, it wasn't even, I just have a wide view of it. And so, I'm not super picky about, so I need to have creative outlets every once in a while, but I love, making other people happy. I've always wanted to be a side man, I tell people I never wanted to grow up to be Michael Jackson. I wanted to be Michael Jackson's bass player. I wanted to be so-and-so's bass player, so-and-so's producer, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I'm focusing, and what I'm thankful for.
And you've done that very well, very successfully, to your credit, man.
There was I don't see it now, but there was a part that I wish that I had, like, really. But early on in high school, I was really studying jazz, and there came a part, and I was playing jazz a lot early on in my career too. And just, artists would come in and I would be the bass player for them. But one part of me was like, you need to practice, because I just wasn't practicing. I wasn't learning tunes. I wasn't interested in, like, trying to figure out how to really solo over tunes. But I knew that if I did, that I would work more and I would solidify my place. And then there was another part of me that was like, I had just gotten a taste of sessions, and I was like, this pays a lot more and it's way easier and I can totally do it,
Yes.
So there's a part of me that's like, I kind of regret not really pushing myself to just play jazz, because it's my favorite music to listen to. And I really love just that style. And I still listen to the newest stuff coming out. And I still listen to the older things that inspired me to start playing bass. So there's a part of me that's like, man, I wonder what it would have been like had I really gone after just that one thing instead of trying to like have, you know, a bunch of different things in my basket.
Yeah. Somebody told me one time he's not a jazz player, but he said, you know, when you play jazz, you play, it's a choice of playing many notes to few or few notes to many.
Many. That's perfect. Exactly.
I hate to say it, but
that's, you know, so true.
I had a guitar player on one time. He said something funny. He's in a punk band out in LA. They've been around 20 years, called the Bronx. It was Joby Ford, the guy's name was, and he said, he has another side band that's, believe it or not, a mariachi, but they do mariachi rock. Yeah. And then he had another project that it's a surf band. And he told me, he goes, when I started making surf band records, my manager came to me and said, congratulations on finding 2 more genres that nobody spends any money on.
Yes, awesome. Great discovery.
Hilarious, you know, but yeah. I mean, but that's what he's happy. He's playing, right. You know, doing what he wants, you know?
Yeah,
so
right.
Just a funny, like aside, kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you like most about yourself?
I like that I can make situations lighter and easier for people. I generally am quick with a joke and you know, an encouragement towards others.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like it comes out in my playing as well. Like that's kind of how I come across. Like I'm here to like, let's make this happen. Let's make it come together. And it's how I'm wired. I kind of like that about myself.
Let's have fun.
Yeah. But let's get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best childhood memory.
Oh. Well, there's this one memory that comes back that I remember when I was about 8 or 9, my grandpa worked at the Hershey factory in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, sure.
And he was the boss. He worked in the Reese's division, but he was known as the Candy Man. And anytime my sister and I would go to our grandparents' house, we knew that the shelves in the kitchen were filled with glass jars of the latest candies from Hershey that weren't out in the stores yet, they were trying so going to grandma and grandpa's house from, you know, from Philly to Hershey, those car rides, they took so long. And when we got there, it was just the best because we'd go to Hershey Park and have candy, and it, you know, doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't, man. As a kid, for sure.
Yeah.
Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
I think after my wife and I, we had trouble having kids right away. And so for about 4 years of the beginning of our marriage, we just kept running into problems. We just couldn't get pregnant. And eventually we figured stuff out and we had twins. And like, sometimes it's hard for people that have kids and then it's like super stressful on the marriage and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that first year, because we had wanted them for so long and we wanted kids, and then we had 2, and we had a lifestyle where we were both kind of freelance from home, so we could make it work and it wasn't hard. I think that time of just those boys arriving and just figuring it out together with Michelle was like one of the sweetest chapters of life. It got harder, but that first 6 months to a year where my family was around, her family, we had help, and we were like so stoked to have kids and a family of our own. Like it was rad. It was rad.
Thank you. That's a nice story, man.
Yeah.
Most important thing your dad taught you?
I think my dad instilled this sense of like a work ethic. He was very loving and patient, but my dad was, you know, he was the proponent of there is no such thing as on time. you're either early or you're late.
Yeah.
And so, and his dad was like that too. And so my dad always kind of just was, he, in that whole thing about just like honoring commitments, being who you are. Your yes is your yes, your no is your no. You know, finish what you start. It's easy to start, it's hard to finish.
Yeah.
Let's get your stuff done. That kind of mentality, along with introducing me to a whole bunch of music, you know, was kind of a real big blessing, and a real big, like, he taught me how to be professional, to be a man of my word, a man of integrity and character, and also like, go discover who you are as an artist. He never was like, listen to this. He's like, this is all great. Put it on. Cool. If you like it, it's great. If you like it, you're learning from it. Great. Go.
Yeah.
So that was a cool mixture, because I already kind of had a lot of times artists are like flighty or disconnected or don't know how to follow through or can't manage themselves properly, you know, and they make amazing art, but maybe it doesn't have longevity, or it doesn't have family involved, or it has, you know, other things involved, or substance abuse, whatever it is.
They're mono-dimensional around their art, and like everything else sometimes is falling apart. Yeah.
Right.
Very
and
true.
I've been more like, you know, I've had a good, I think a healthy dose of both of those sides. And I think my dad was responsible for that. Yeah.
How about your mom? Most important thing she taught you?
Man, my mom's just like, love you. Like, just whatever makes you happy. Like, I just want, you know, I'm here for you. My parents were like the most supportive, and still are. Like, they are just like, they're at every concert, they're at every talent show, they're paying for lessons, they're encouraging this, they're encouraging that. Even to this day, they're so generous with their money and their time, like seeing us, you know, succeed and not fail. And they're just amazing. And so my mom is like very much like that. Like, what can we give? How can we love?
Right.
Let's be there for them. Well, let's tell them about this, and let's encourage that. Like, she's, you know, giving, and don't worry about me. Let me just make sure you're taken care of. They're lovely like that. And then my dad's like, okay, what do you want to do? All right, let's do that then. You know, what do you want to give? Near you? All right, let's give that.
Are they close? Do they live near you?
Yeah, they're in Orange County. So I'm up in Santa Clarita near Magic Mountain, Valencia area. And they're down in Orange County near Anaheim. They're in Placentia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have hobbies outside of music, Dan?
I think a lot of times the music ends up being the hobby to escape the work of just being a dad of 3 and all of the stuff that goes on with that. But I love biking. I do a lot of, I jump on my bike. It's been super hot lately, but it's been like over 100 here for like the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But during the fall and winter, I ride almost every morning. I have bike trails all around my house, and love riding up here, and love movies, love going to movies with the kids and stuff, and just getting outside. We have a dog. We love walking the dog, reading books. When Michelle and I love to read books together. So yeah, I have some, but I'm so thankful that my job is not a point of stress or a point of worry, but a point of outflow and creativity and release, you know? So, you know, I've always been thankful for that. My mom always was like, your dad doesn't have a hobby. And my dad got burnt out teaching choral music to high schoolers. He got burnt out on it, and he didn't have an outlet anywhere else. And she's like, make sure you have a hobby. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get burned out of creating music and playing jazz and creating on other people's tunes. And, you know, I don't think that's going to grow tired for me.
It's a little different.
So,
yeah. Your hobby is your vocation.
It is sort of, yeah.
Just a few questions left. Tell me a specific experience that changed your life or altered the way you think about things.
Wow. Didn't have any massive, like, groundbreaking experiences. I think, you know, like I said, I grew up in a safe home my whole life. We were cool. We never had any major trauma. The only trauma was probably just not talking about things as much as we should have.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember like really feeling a lot of stuff when I moved out for the first time and I went away to college. that first few nights I was like, I'm really on my own. Like, I'm really like, I just cut the cord, and I'm studying music, and I'm 2,000 miles away from my family. And this is the first time. And I'm, that was pretty insane. To feel that sense of sort of like loss or, separation. And really, like, it only lasted like a day or two, because then I turned on okay, let's go, here we go. But when I was at North Texas, there was auditions for the Disney All-American Show Band. And it's this program, I don't even know if it's still happening, but it might be. But essentially, they went around to all the top college music schools and auditioned all these musicians to come see if they would make it to be a part of this band. And there was a big band there at Epcot, and then they were auditioning for a show band, which had dancers, and we would perform in front of the castle. Well, all that to say, I ended up making the audition. I was the electric bass player that they hired in 1994 to go play at Orlando, Florida. So I lived in Kissimmee in a trailer
That's
park.
Wild.
Yeah. And for that summer out of North Texas, before I moved home, I went to Disney World and I played in the All-American Show Band. I don't even know if any of those, well, I still know most of those guys, but they aren't, and most of them aren't playing anymore, or they might be doing local stuff. They're all in different places, but
there's some great musicians get in that band. I mean,
oh man, yeah. In fact, in that band, in Epcot, in the other band that we were living with at the time, Mike Valerio was the bass player and Terrion Gully was the drummer. And they both went on to, well, Mike's doing amazing stuff here in LA, and Terrion Gully moved, I think, to New York and played with Christian McBride and all these great jazz musicians. And now he might be Diane Reeves' music director. Anyway,
okay.
Amazing. A bunch of different artists were in there. But that summer was really, really special because I was making $195 a week as part of the program. They put us up for free in these trailers, but we kind of had to pay for our own groceries out of that money, but that's all we had to pay for.
Right.
We played 9 to 1 in front of the castle, and just some of my best friends, and amazing just time of like, wow, I just went to school for music for 1 year, and now I'm quote unquote doing my first gig, And so that was a special summer, and that a game changer. And from there I moved back home, and then I started where we started at the beginning of our story at Cal State Fullerton.
That's so cool. You know what's funny? I am sure that I saw you perform there, because in 90
you might have,
because we never go to we try not to go to Disney in the summer.
Yeah,
because it's so freaking hot.
It's so hot.
When my kids were little, I know there were times in 94, my oldest son would have been 4 and my little one would have been 2. And I'm sure we took them there at summer. That's just really funny. Yeah.
It was great. It was actually, like, for the most part, it was the best time to play because it was the coolest part of the day, just to have that morning shift. That last set was a little rough sometimes, and there was no shade. So we were only out there for, it was like an 18-minute show, which we had to have memorized. And then we just goofed off the rest of the day.
That's cool.
I mean, it was insane to work at the park like that as a 19-year-old,
And you got to hang out in the park for free, I'm assuming.
Anytime we wanted to.
Yeah. Cool.
And just hang out back. Oh man, so fun. I have so many great memories of Orlando that summer. And then that was it. I was done. From then on, I never had another job that I wasn't playing music. So
that is really cool.
Yeah. Just been playing bass.
Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much has just been a natural part of aging? You could even go 7 years because you're probably not old, for age range,
Yeah, I'm still in my 40s.
I figured.
So yeah, I think the last year or two has been the most difficult. Just, a global pandemic. Your job shuts down, your means of income, your well-being, your emotional health, like everything changes. And I feel like depression and anxiety kind of came in a way that I had never experienced before. I'm a positive, like uplifting, like I said, some of the things I love about myself, humor, taking a situation, making it fun, and a lot of that went away last year. And so I'm kind of fighting to get it back. I have to be intentional, especially with my family, about not just shutting down and being present and being their dad, even though it's difficult or I might be in a darker place. So it's probably been that. Before that was probably the kid's birth 10 years ago. So that was, that was a game changer too. But this last 2 years have been pretty challenging. And looking forward to coming out of it. I feel like I am, at least emotionally, and I feel like, work and stuff is coming back to normal. So that's kind of cool too. But yeah.
Good. You've also been in the toughest state to have this in, from a work.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Florida, everything's been open since like day one.
Yeah. We just got masks back on.
Yeah. I saw that, man. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, have you back here in like 7 or 8 years and ask you that same question.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I'd love to see where I am in 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting.
Kids will be out of the house.
Oh, you'll be a different guy.
Yeah.
Just that responsibility thing is like, it's huge, man. I was really heavy.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom?
I think it's cliche because people say it, but like a lot of times I'll get asked like, how do you manage being a husband and a dad and making music? And I think what I tell people and what I would say is that, my priority was never music. It was the family.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you let that inform your decisions as you're coming up, if that's something that's important to you, you want to have a family or healthy relationships even, then make that be your focus and not music. And I feel like when you do that the byproduct of that is the fruit in your career, you see like, oh, this is actually working out because I've made a decision to prioritize healthy relationships or a kind soul or watering your soul or whatever you want to talk about, how you want to look at it. That cultivates fruit in other areas. So I feel like if you are always pursuing music and then you're like, oh, why are my relationships off balance? Well, it's because you haven't been focusing on that. You've been focusing on one thing. And so it makes the music harder to get to when I'm not right emotionally with the relationships in my life. Does that make sense? Man,
it makes total sense. Yeah. I think that's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, if you can secure those and get those grounded and firm, then you have that freedom to really create the way you're supposed to, instead of letting that other part of your brain occupy that space that's maybe not so healthy. So
I think that's really, it seems like when you prioritize your career first, it doesn't add to those other things. But when you prioritize your family and your relationships first, that does add to your career. Very funny how that works.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey man, thank you very much for everything. I really appreciate it. Let me tell people where to find you.
I wanted to tell you too. I'm playing. I forgot something, but I'm playing at the end of this month, July 29th, 30th, and 31st. I'm playing with an artist named Shoshana Bean. I don't know if many people know her, but she's an incredible singer. You can find her on Instagram, and she's just an amazing R&B vocalist, but does jazz and Broadway. She was Elphaba, and she was the star of Wicked for many years on Broadway, and now she's branching out and doing stuff. And she has albums out and fantastic, but she's doing a 3-night residency in LA at this new club called, I think it's called Bourbon something. You can look it up. But so that's awesome. Happening July 29, 30, 31. I'll be there with a cool band.
Shoshana Bean, 29, 30, 31. Also, if you are interested in working with Dan on having him play on some stuff on your record, playing tracks, he is available for that. He has a home studio, and he has everything covered. Upright, bow, electric, 5-string. And also, if you are an intermediate player or above, and you're looking for some guidance and lessons and maybe some help, and how does Dan do some of the things he does, or you're stuck in a certain area. Again, on upright or electric, he's available for Zoom lessons there. And the best way to contact him, one of two ways: you can message him on Instagram and it's Dan Lutz, Lutz, or you can, what's that?
Triple Lutz on Instagram.
It's Triple Lutz on Instagram, or his email is triple lutz at the spell it out, triple TRIPLE Lutz, LUTZ at me.com. Obviously, as always, just be respectful. Just let him know what you're looking for so he can get back to you with an intelligent answer. And if you wanted to play on tracks, send him some of your music so he could figure out, does it make sense for the both of you to connect with that?
Right.
Anything else, man? Anything else?
Man, no, thank you so much. It's been such an honor to be on here. Thanks for having me. Cool.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And best of luck with everything. And I'm glad you're coming as this comes back. You're an interesting guy. I really like a lot of the stuff we talked about, and you'll be back on the show again.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it around on your social media channels. Thanks very much to Dan Lutz. Again, if you're interested in hooking up with him for tracks or lessons, it's triple lutz, LUTZ at me.com, or you can message him on Instagram, triple lutz. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your bass, and have fun. Until next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Dan, thank you for everything, brother.
See ya.